Hi, friends, and welcome back. Lights on a Neuromoms Collective podcast, a space where caregivers of brain injury survivors can exhale for a few minutes.
We are the founders of Neuromoms Collective. We came together to help support those families of brain injury survivors. And today we have a really special topic and one that is also kind of hard. Amanda, do you want to introduce the topic?
Yeah, today we're going to talk about what we're going to kind of look at for our season 2. We finished our season 1. As we look at season 2, we really want to focus more on relationships, how that shifts after that traumatic brain injury, whether it's a relationship with your family members, a romantic relationship with children. All those relationships can dramatically shift as we're kind of managing those traumatic brain injuries from the survivor's point of view. And as caregivers, it really is a space that's hard to manage and navigate.
When I was first dealing with Dallas's traumatic brain injury, I found that for us, Dallas was young, he was 24 and he had lots of friends. I found that everybody showed up and it was big energy and everybody was there and nobody was scared off by his injuries because they were so big and so new and so unbelievable that people just showed up to help. It took a couple of weeks and then a couple of months for those relationships to start to change and fade and people to go on with their lives. And that became a couple of months after his AVM rupture is when I started to panic that he wasn't going to have the kind of social support that he had before the AVM because he was so popular. Did you worry about the same sort of thing, Amanda?
Mm-hmm. And I feel like that initial, when they're in the hospital and people are coming to them, it looks so different because we felt that too. People were coming, the sports teams, lots of attention. It wasn't until we transitioned home that I felt that like, okay, now what? And then even as we tried to fit back into what was already going on, life is going on. We are sitting in a hospital, but things are just flying by outside. It wasn't until we tried to get ourselves back into society where things were going on. And I have the personality where I'm just like, okay, let's just get right back at it. Let's get back up on that horse, ride that bike, whatever we need to do. And I did not give enough time and attention to that emotional healing that Mackenzie was trying to do at that time. I had a lot of fear about, I guess, fear of missing out, fear of her missing out, fear of everybody else starting their senior year of high school, and we're getting ready to go back in and have another neck surgery. I have this checklist in my head of what you got to start your senior year. You've got to show up for this event. More of just because I wanted her to get back into the flow of life as soon as possible. And that's where her support was. Her support was in that flow of life. So I probably had a fear there that I did not recognize and understand.
The denial stage of being a caregiver or a spouse or parent of somebody who has had a terrible injury or illness like this, I think the denial phase is necessary for self-preservation and also really can lead you down the wrong paths. I remember because my son was military, his military handler saying to me a couple months in, okay, we need to start looking about transitioning him out for retirement. And I was saying, he'll be back to work. He needs a couple months. My denial was so big, and that obviously isn't having to do with relationships, but I just believed everything was going to be fine really soon. I was mad at people who said otherwise. I think with his friends, sometimes I did a disservice by not being able to be honest with them about the length of time and the expectations that they might have. And I pretended like he was not impacted as much as he was. So I would say to his friends, like, why don't you come over and take him for lunch? I wouldn't say, you're going to have to take his wheelchair. It folds up. It fits nicely in the back of the car. You're going to have to order for him because he can't read off the menu right now. Make sure that you cut his food because he's paralyzed on his right side. I just said things like, why don't you come over and play games? Why don't you come take him for lunch? I think I really did a disservice to everybody there because I was in such denial.
Oh, Erin, I can identify with that so much. Different energy, different injuries, but the same concept in my mind. I think some of it was denial, and then some of it was I just want everything to be okay. I want everyone to be okay. I want my daughter to be okay. I want her relationships to still be intact. I did a disservice to our family too because I did not recognize, understand, seek out information, figure out enough about what we were dealing with her TBI. We went through the neuropsych testing and they're like, oh my gosh, she's great. We'll put a few accommodations in a 504 and put her back in school and she's going to do fine. Like her memory's good. This is good. Like all these things are good testing on paper. And I just kept saying, but things are just not that way in real life. It's not playing out that way. But when they're telling you over and over, she's a miracle. She shouldn't even be here. And she's doing great. We're just going to keep rolling. I wasn't acknowledging the damage that was done to her brain, the trauma that was done to her brain enough. And so I think you've said this before when there's a behavior or a situation, is that a TBI
Yes.
or is that who the person is? I wasn't pausing enough to do that and giving enough credit, time, and space to the TBI recovery. And that has impacted negatively
Yeah.
relationships in our family. I
Even
regret
though
it.
we did the best we could in those moments, we would do differently now. What we can do
Yes.
now is share those missteps, and maybe somebody can do a little bit better or different with their experience because it's an untenable situation. You're going to get it wrong. Any caregiver listening to this, we're
Yes.
going to make some doozy mistakes, and join the club. There's lovely people here. But and when you're saying like the doctors and everything saying that Mackie was doing so well, that's something that I think I allowed myself to hold on to. Again, I know this is about relationships, but when they would say, he's doing great, he swallowed today, and his friends were like, how's Dallas doing? I'd be like, he's doing great. Period. I wasn't giving them the truth. I was raised on rom-coms. I'm 51. So I was raised on those 80s and 90s rom-coms. I was raised on Everything Turns Out Okay. And I would read those People magazine articles about the child born with every possible medical thing. And then they went on to win the Olympics. I was always like, that could be my kid. I just really believed that I could will it to be. And that didn't help.
Yeah.
It did help in a lot of ways because I came at everything with such massive optimism that did absolutely help. But for relationships, that was tricky.
Yeah. And I can identify with that with my faith. I absolutely clung to the hope that everything was going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
I just couldn't think of it any other way. And so it was that hope and that joy that I held on to that pulled me through. I think it's taking a step back and like really seeing things for how they were. All I can keep thinking is space and time for the healing and for the things that were really happening in front of us. I guess that is one of the biggest things, if I can say to a caregiver that's listening, is really sit back. Those TBIs are tricky. They are so tricky because we can't see what's going on. We're just out here guessing, trying to maneuver through and figure out, was that a TBI reaction or is that just how a teenager is going to react? I've made the statement before. If you have a family member that, has a drug addiction, you go to Al-Anon. You want to figure out what's going on. You want to figure out how to support and help them. With TBIs, we don't have our Al-Anon group. That's kind of what brought Erin and I together, the caregiver support group. It is a tough road and a lot of different spaces to try to maneuver through. And we are going on 10 years and still trying to maneuver through some of those tough emotional ups and downs and figuring out, is this a TBI reaction or is this just an emotional reaction that everybody else has?
Season being focused on relationships, that is one of the aspects, is the relationship that we have in our case as mothers with the TBI survivors, and recognizing how to interact with them now. I had this experience earlier today where I couldn't determine if a choice that Dallas was trying to make was that he wasn't motivated and he was feeling kind of lazy, or if it was his brain injury and he was tired, and in which case he needs rest. But I couldn't really tell. It's just a precarious position to be in. So with Dallas earlier today behaving in a way that I didn't enjoy, trying to figure out what I was dealing with is tricky. From a relationship standpoint, I have found that I have to parent him a little bit more like I would have parented him when he is quite young. For example, I have to remind him sometimes to say please and thank you. And he's a really nice person, but that muscle memory, that habit is gone. And I'll whisper. I try very hard not to embarrass him. Thank you. And he'll, oh, thank you so much. So I do have to parent him in a slightly different way without making him a little kid because he's 27. So that's one way. And with both Sadie and Mackenzie, who have been through the accident, have you found that you've had to parent a little differently as well?
Oh, absolutely. Navigating that has been tricky because, again, it's
Yeah.
is this a young adult situation or is this a
Yeah.
trauma TBI situation? It can be tricky. Sometimes I get it right. Sometimes I have really messed up and had to apologize. Had a situation
Must be the
today
day.
too. Just trying to navigate and process things. It's not always easy
Mhm.
when you're not right there with the person in the moment to be able to try to sort things out and figure out
So we'll
how to
talk
help
about that more
support.
in future episodes. We wanted to cover a couple of different higher level relationships that we worried about for our kids. The greatest number of people would be their platonic friendships. I think it's true that we're going to be able to have Mackenzie's best friends on for a future pod.
Yes, she has two best friends from high school that are willing to come on and be very transparent, share their stories, their journey before and after with an individual with TBI, and even some college friends
High school friends, as
perspectives.
I recall, is that they were super close friends. The accident happened, everybody was there, and then things got tough for a while, and they all had to rebuild that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Is that accurate?
Yeah, it is. The two friends are such a great source of strength for her, and they don't live near each other, but are still besties and such an integral part of her life and her family.
I
It's
think
beautiful.
that that's going to be a really interesting conversation because the accommodations that people have to make when they're partnered with somebody who has a chronic illness or a chronic injury, like our children, we're asking other people to make accommodations for them, but we also have to ask our surviving loved ones to make accommodations for their friends who are not dealing with medical stuff. Dallas has to be okay with the fact that his friends are going to go hiking and camping without him, and that they're going to go, he used to go to raves, and that they're in the military and that they're flying and they're jumping out of airplanes, and he has to make space for that to be something he supports and is excited about for them, even though it hurts him and the grief that you don't get to do something. He's happy for them. But we often think about the people that are healthy having to make all the accommodations, and they often get credit. Oh, they're so good. They stayed friends with him after his injury. And, yeah, it's really hard. It is not true that all of the work for making relationships last or making new relationships is on the healthy person, the person not dealing with recovery. It takes both sets to make it work. What do you think, Amanda?
Oh, absolutely. Because there are so many things that you might have been able to be involved in the past, but you're not able to. I think, especially, this happened when they were going into their senior year of high school. There's a lot of moving parts going on. And when you have a traumatic brain injury, lights, noise, people, you're going to make a lot of sacrifices. You're not going to be around a lot of situations. You can't always expect other people to accommodate that. So there's definitely a mourning and a loss of those situations. So I absolutely see it on both sides. And then as you continue to transition and grow, and if you're not near each other, these girls were all miles apart, that you're developing your own friendships and relationships aside of that. So then to be able to come back together, recognize some of the situations that you had that was misunderstanding, offer some grace and forgiveness, and rebuild a friendship based on the common practices and foundation that you had, I think is a beautiful thing, because I don't know that everyone can do that.
It's meant a lot to me that Dallas has so many friends from high school, a couple from middle school that still check in. People live all over the country now, especially because he was military. It means a lot to me when we still get invitations to weddings. I want him to start going to some of those things, like showing up, like, I'm not dead yet. Let's get into it and continue with him having some fun and going to things that he would have gone to before. He's still limited because he's afraid of the music and that kind of thing. He would have to exit early, but he'll have to start going back to some of those on his own time. He'll have to be brave.
But Erin, I just want to address that the way you said it. It is an excitement for us. I know it means a lot to Dallas, and I know it means a lot to Mackenzie, but it is also an excitement for us as parents, because we want the best for our kids, our young adults. We want them to be as engaged in this beautiful life as they can be. And I know that as my children have grown up, gotten older, their really close friends have meant a lot to me. And I have valued the relationship that I've been able to have with them. So that excitement for those relationships and those continuation, I mean, we feel that very deeply because we value those relationships for them.
I want those relationships to exist because if all goes the way it's supposed to go, Dallas will outlive me. I don't want his whole life to be held together by what I'm able to do. His life needs to be independent of me, just like it would have been before the accident. Obviously, we have to rebuild that, but that's my goal, is that whatever that looks like, some people might want a partner or get married and have kids, and some people don't. Whatever that relationship structure that matters to them, that will be fulfilling as the parent, when I'm gone, that's super important to me.
Oh, I agree. And I think that takes us right into the next thing we have talked about, that person, that relationship that's significant to them. We had our husbands on earlier in season 1 and talked about how much their support and how valuable we feel those relationships are. And we want to have the same hopes and dreams for our children. Felt unsettling there for a while. I remember when Mackenzie went away to college and relationships were really hard. I wasn't sure what was going to end up happening for her. I know she had a desire at one time to be married and to have a family.
Spoiler alert, she got married and had a baby. Her husband, Eric, did she know him before her accident? Had they met?
No. They met freshman year of college. He met her probably a year and a half after the accident. I do get emotional sometimes when I talk about my son-in-law. He is an amazing young man who I believe came into my daughter's life at the perfect time. I think the mental health stuff that goes along with TBIs is really heavy. There's so much we just don't see with TBIs. And that's how it's so tricky. This sweet little, I shouldn't even call him little, this sweet big old football player from Alabama came in and just won her heart over. They have a really sweet story. It's not easy. They have had to navigate some really tricky things. He's had to learn about head injuries and how to support and help her. But he does it with such grace, patience, and kindness. It just blesses my mama heart. Sorry. Gets me sometimes. But during season 2, we are going to have the two of them come on and do an episode or two. He's a pretty quiet guy, so I'm really curious to see how he's going to do on our pod.
going to do
So it'll be
great,
good.
and I'm going to edit it so that he's going to do even better than he thinks he's going to do. It's going to be fine. And we'll talk. Hopefully, we'll have Dallas on pretty soon. Dallas has aphasia, which is a result of his brain injury, where he has expressive aphasia. We can understand what's being said to him, but sometimes the way he speaks out isn't super clear. And when he's nervous, it's worse. So we're going to give the pod a try. He might not be far enough along in his recovery. So you may or may not be hearing him on the pod, but we're going to give it a try. He had met this really sweet gal like a week before the accident. And then it happened. I didn't even know her last name. I didn't even know her first name. I just knew it was kind of unusual, but not weird. So I went through his 550 Instagram followers until I found her. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's her. And I messaged her and I was like, hey, just FYI, I think you went on a couple dates with my son. Just wanted you to know he had an accident. He's not a jerk. He's not ghosting you. So sorry it didn't work out. And she was like, I knew it. I knew he wouldn't just stop texting me or calling me. And she wound up being incredibly involved in his life. They wound up being a couple and being together for about a year and a half. And it was everything that a Hollywood sweet romance and drama is based on, like the perfect love story. But when he got sick again and wound up back in the hospital and lost everything again, his brain injury made him kind of mean for a little while, made him sort of short-tempered, made him sort of just cranky. And she, rightfully so, and I support this. If she was my daughter, I would have said to her, you don't need to do this. This is not healthy for you to spend your 20s with this. I have only love in my heart for her and her folks. When that ended, I was like, I really appreciate that she was there as much as she was. And I'm sorry that she lost a couple of years of her 20s. But I was happy for her. I thought it was healthier for her. But then I was terrified for Dallas. Terrified. He tried to date online. Online dating is rough. He wasn't going out and meeting people in the real natural ways that you meet people, or even the old school ways of going to bars. He can't do that because of the noise and everything. He was single for about a year and a half, and it's scary because the days are long and the years are short. Like every day and every week that he wanted to be dating and he wanted to be in a relationship that wasn't available was just gut wrenching. And there was nothing, that's something you can't solve as a parent. Over the summer, he wound up meeting this really sweet gal who does not have a brain injury, but she works in medicine. She's very familiar with it and super comfortable because she can see his intelligence, his humor. She understands the patient. And I believe I would have liked her if they'd met when he hadn't had a brain injury. Like if she just showed up in his world, I believe that I would have liked her. But I adore her because I witnessed the way that she just is. When we talk about the accommodations that you have to make for each other, it's not asking a lot of her because she's quiet and she's patient and she's still. And so it's not difficult for her to just give him a minute to come up with the words. And this is a highly educated, really interesting, outdoorsy, active person. I don't know where it's going to go, but I hope it goes a long way. What it says to my heart is that he is capable of meeting quality people that are, good values, hardworking in whatever way they can be. I'm so excited to see that next chapter unfolding for him.
Yeah, and I think it's such a perfect time for him too, because it's a desire. And again, we don't want something our kids don't want, but it's a desire of his heart to have somebody to share life with and to do life with and to communicate with. It just makes me so excited for him too. Following along with this little story has been so fun.
I know, it's so cute.
Just in
what
their
the friends
business.
have helped in 10 weeks, we're all going to Maryland for a retreat. So Amanda and I can work on the pod, and those two little cutie pies can have a little vacay together too. I have a friend of mine whose son's traumatic brain injury left him not in a position to date, and that's probably not going to be available in his lifetime. And we were talking a couple weeks ago, and she hurts her heart a lot. He had been married, and that's a loss that's really sad for him. And she's so cute. She said, he wants to be married so bad, I think he'd marry me. It's such a goof. And I knew what she meant, because what she meant was they're just like, I'll marry the person walking by on the street that I've never seen before. They start to change their standards because they just ache for that connection, and it's really hard. So for folks that are going through that with their kids, their TBI survivors, it is hard. It is hard, but it's not necessarily impossible. I think of that amazing, beautiful show, Love on the Spectrum. I wouldn't watch it when it first came out because I was afraid it was people making fun of people on the spectrum. Conceptually, I was like, oh no, we're not doing that. And everybody's like, it's so good. When I watched it, I was like, this is beautiful. I didn't understand that it was going to later impact the way I would think about TBIs. That there is absolutely someone who is spectacular that looks at what you have available, including the challenges or deficits, and says, oh, that's fantastic. I just think it's wonderful. And that gave me a lot of comfort, actually, that show did.
Yeah, that's what we need as parents, because we are carrying so much fear and grief for what we had planned and thought and dreamed for our kids, that we need to have some of that little quiet hope.
We were afraid before we recorded today, Amanda, that this was going to be a super hard, heavy podcast. And I actually think that it was a lot lighter and brighter than I expected. Let's give them a resource wonderful. And a little quotey quote and head out for the day, shall we? So the resource of the week is the Brain Injury Association of America, BIAA. And the reason we chose this one is that they connect survivors to virtual and in-person social opportunities. They have a phone number that you can call, explain the situation you're in and the needs that you have, and they can try to help you match with the appropriate organization or opportunity. Many of those opportunities are free. Really encourage folks to check out that one. Amanda, do you have a quote of the week?
Quote of the week: to be fully seen by somebody then and be loved anyhow. This is a human offering that can border on miraculous. Elizabeth Gilbert.
Isn't that why we love Eric so much? Because he saw Mackie as she was and loved her. That's beautiful. That's all we want. Keep looking for those glimmers, and we hope that you continue to listen and find some comfort and reassurance in Lights On, our podcast. All right, everybody, keep those lights on. See you soon.